All right, guys, so today in front of me, we have the Maker's Mark BRT-01 and 02. I want to send a big thank you over to Katie and Ethan Turk over at Drifting Drams on YouTube for sending me these samples here to review on the channel. So the name BRT was given for the hand barrel rotation they do over at Maker's Mark, as well as the temperature of the whiskey process. So the BRT-01, the flavor profile was inspired by the flavors you get for the whiskeys that sit at the very top of the rickhouse, and the BRT-02 for the whiskey profile that you get for the lower, cooler temperatures of the rickhouse. Definitely excited to get into these. I do not see these bottles around me at all. Definitely excited to get into these guys. So without further ado, let's go. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the BRT-01. This one comes in at 109.4 proof, and again, is inspired for the flavor profile that you would find at the top of the rickhouse where it's very hot. Let's go ahead and get in the nose. Wow, so there's actually a lot going on this one. It's like, it's very cherry forward. There's also some other kind of lighter fruits that are in there. There's some nutmeg. So a lot of baking spices on this one. Almost reminds me of a... almost of like a cherry pie that just has a lot of like baking spices added into it. Yeah, I mean, so there's like some cherry, some strawberry, there's some nutmeg, there's some allspice going on this one. Very, very fruit forward. There's also like this slight kind of like a licorice, like a one of the cherry licorice notes on this one. Yeah, again, nutmeg, cherry, some strawberry, some allspice. Very small hint of clove further into the glass. Really nice nose on this one, guys. Get the palate. Cheers. That's really good. Front of the palate, apricot, some honey. Middle of the palate, some of that cherry kind of shines through that I got on the nose. Then there's like a slight hint of kind of milk chocolate that kind of sits there along the middle of the palate. Definitely pick up a little some rye spice going on there on that first sip. Into the finish, doesn't last very long. I'd say it's a medium finish. That honey kind of continues to kind of go down. That was on the front of the palate with that apricot. Has a pretty nice mouthfeel to it though. I mean, it's kind of viscous. Let's get into the second. Yeah, so a lot of brown sugar and allspice just really started to creep up there on the middle of the palate where those rye spices kind of were. I mean, it may not have been rye spice. I didn't necessarily get that flavor profile, but it was definitely spicy on that first sip. I mean, only being 109.4 proof, it's not going to blow you away. So where that spiciness came from, not quite sure, because I really didn't get the flavor of that rye spice on the middle of the palate. But like I said, that brown sugar really started to develop there. Again, that apricot and honey on the front of the palate. Definitely some brown sugars there on the mid palate. Cherry chocolate kind of vibe going on there on the middle of the palate as well. That chocolate kind of slowly appearing again, like that milk chocolate. And then onto the back and into the finish, it slowly starts to fade. Medium finish. Has a medium viscosity as well. I really like this. I might need to find a bottle of this. Let's get a last sip, guys. Cheers. Yeah, so front of the palate and mid to mid back palate is kind of where this one really shines through. Finish does kind of lack on this one. It's there a little bit, just not as long as I was hoping for. But the flavor profile on the front of the palate and mid to back is stellar. Again, that apricot and honey kind of sweetness, that sweet fruit on the front. Brown sugars, allspice, nutmeg, cherry chocolate kind of vibe going on there on the middle of the palate. Middle of the palate is all over the place. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on there. Spiciness definitely died down, whether that was the rye spice, whatever was in there, or proof. That kind of went away, and that's kind of where that like cherry chocolate, definitely some baking spices that started to evolve there in the middle of the palate. regardless, this BRT-01, definitely a fan of this one. Going to look for a bottle. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get into the BRT-02. This one, again, is 109.4 proof. This one is inspired by the flavors that you would find typically at the lower and cooler parts of the rickhouse. Let's go ahead and get in the nose. Very, very different from the 01. So this one, I get like a darker chocolate on the nose. I do get like some black pepper there further into the glass, but there's some nice caramel like sweetness to kind of balance that out. There is like a huge amount of like vanilla extract a little bit further away from the glass on this one. Further in, you know, you do get some of that like maybe some darker chocolate, some brown sugar. Again, some caramel kind of, you know, in there as well. A little hint of nutmeg there on the nose as well. But very, very different. Very, very different on the nose. Let's get into the palate. Cheers. So, very different. Night and day difference. So on this one, on the front of the palate, you do pick up a little bit of like a darker chocolate. Not completely dark, like that bitterness of a chocolate. Still sweet, but it's like the caramel, vanilla, chocolate kind of thing going on there on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate, there's like no spiciness at all. I actually pick up a little bit of toffee. And then on the back of the palate, I pick up like a slight hint of cherry and a little bit of peach. Like a cherry peach. Very, very different profile than I was expecting. It's really good, though. It's really good. I think I need to buy both of these bottles. Let's get in the second sip. Man, I almost feel like this one is just more... It's like these like savory kind of like chocolatey, vanilla, caramel kind of going on the front. And it's just like, it's like sweet and then fruity on the backside. Not picking up like any clove or any rye spice, anything like that. It's just, it's very kind of fruity, almost like a blackberry there that I just picked up with some like a hint of cherry and a hint of peach. The fruitiness on like the mid to back palate and through the finish is crazy. And then it's just like this chocolate, caramel, vanilla kind of cake sweetness, savoriness on the front of the palate. Very wild. Again, vastly different from the other one. I think I may be more of a fan of this one, the 02, than the 01. I just feel like the flavors on this one are very dense and rich and savory. It coats the palate a little bit more than the first one. You know, viscosity still on that medium side, but I feel like a little bit more than the first one. The first one came off a little bit more spicy, a little bit more of a bite, whether that was a rye spice. Proof points are the same, so it can't be that. Okay. Let's get into the last sip, guys. Cheers. I like it. I like it a lot. If I were to get a bottle of either of these, it would be the 2 for me. Again, vanilla, a little bit of a darker chocolate, not completely dark, not bitterness, still sweet. Caramel, vanilla front, like on the front of the palate. Middle of the palate, like there's like, that's kind of where that cherry starts to creep up a little bit. And then end of the back, it's just like peaches and blackberry and cherry, and it's like just this fruit bowl kind of going on. A little bit longer finish, a little bit more viscosity on this number 2. Again, if I had to pick one for my palate, I would pick the 2. I just feel like, again, like I said, viscosities are there. I love that sweetness on the front, fruitiness on the back. Very, just slightly spicy, more viscosity, a little bit more of a finish. Exactly what, I'm looking for in a bottle. Fantastic batch here of the BRT-02. So I want to thank you guys for tuning into this episode of Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. And again, I want to send a big thank you over to Katie and Ethan Turk over at Drifting Drams on YouTube. Make sure you guys head over to that channel, subscribe. For me, guys, again, it was for me the clear winner was BRT-02. I loved the sweetness of that chocolate, vanilla, caramel on the front, that fruit bowl kind of mix there on the back. BRT-01, it's great too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I just I just like the flavor profile of the 02 more than the 01. 01 came off a little bit more spicy. Not sure if that was a rye spice thing or what, but still a lot of really nice flavors on the BRT-1. Again, it just shows you how vastly different flavor profiles can be depending on the location of where they are in the warehouse. The cooler kind of lower temps, on the BRT-2 for me provided a better flavor profile. Whereas the BRT-1 was inspired, by the flavors you would typically get at the higher points of the rickhouse. Either way, both of them are damn good. Glad I was able to try them. Thank you, Katie and Ethan. But for me, the clear winner from my palate again was the BRT-02. So guys, if you're looking for more reviews like this, hit that subscribe button, bell notification to be alerted of any upcoming reviews or live streams. You also find me on Instagram at Dusty Dan's Whiskey Reviews. Until next time, guys, stay dusty.